Hi Anti-Society, welcome back to the Anti-Social Planet. Today we are checking out another Dreamcatcher album, this time Escape the Era. I'm always so excited with these. We get a whole bunch of new songs, we get intros, we get amazing vocals. I'll probably end up crying. There's also probably going to be a time where they just like completely blindside me with something really interesting in their sound, because that usually happens. It's just always a super exciting day when I get to do a Dreamcatcher album. So I'm going to keep this short in the intro because this is going to be a long video, chances are. So let's get into the intro song and just immerse ourselves in some more Dreamcatcher music. Again, the artwork for the albums, lovely. I love them sticking with this specific kind of design with the very like simple color palette, but like intricate, almost like the covers of like leather-bound books kind of thing. Anyway, I'm interested in this one too because of the title, like the inside outside, when we had in You and I with this whole like dream world thing, these like different layers of being trapped in the dream and that kind of a thing. So the inside outside is interesting to me. Ooh, that's scary. Ooh. Oh, okay. I like that we have the like really fast strings on the one side, and then we have like the slower synth in the backing. It sounds epic. It sounds again like a thriller, like an action film, as opposed to some of the other sounds that they've had up to this point. Like it sounds like a soundtrack to one of those films. Like the big drums too. That's a jarring synth. What are we winding up to? I was not expecting that bass. Oh, that huge switch up. It's like a little bit funky. That bass is super prevalent. Oh, I hope that that is like an actual like preview that we're going to get a song that's like super bass heavy. I love bass so much that they do something that's got like a little bit of funk to it and a bass kind of sound, which I know that they can get into that sound because I've heard it. I just give me more, you know? Ooh, let's switch up! Hang on. We're switched it up again. This might be one of my favorite intros. That like wind down and then it changes a bit. Ooh. Oh, I hope this is like a hint of what's to come. Okay, that might be one of my favorite intros with the like the bass and then the switch up that they had, the guitars. I really like the synths that they're using in it, like the really like buzzy sounding ones, and then the ones that are, I think, going at like a different beat pattern. Again, people who know more about music than me, but like if you have like 4 beats within like usually you have like a 4 beats, and it's kind of like the strings were going a lot faster in that one as opposed to the rhythm that the synth was hitting at. I'm probably explaining that in an awful way to someone who actually understands how to like write music, like sheet music, but I hope you understand. That one though, I really hope that that is like a clear preview of the kind of sounds that we're getting in this album, because that makes me super excited. Also, the design in the corners here, this design looks a little bit like a jack-o'-lantern, and I don't know if that's intentional. It might be, knowing Dreamcatcher, but it was just a random thing that I noticed. There is a special clip for this one. I did see it. I think it's like a live performance though, so we'll put a pin in it for later. I will look back. I just kind of want to hear the song, get the lyrics and all that kind of stuff, and then we'll go back to special clips. I'm nervous about this one though. Mayday makes me like I already have like panic sirens going on with this one. Okay, wasn't expecting piano. I was expecting to kind of hit me in the face a little bit more. Oh, wait, give it a second. Just had to give them a minute, you know? I love the guitar. Ooh. Ooh, okay, I love the chunky guitar. I love that they're all kind of sitting in this like deeper chest range because it fits well with that kind of production that's happening. Okay, I know I'm like pausing before it, but the change in the cadence there, like the choice of the melodies that they're singing, oh, I love it. I also love that they're digging in to their voices. Like all of them have this very like almost like guttural sound to the way that they're singing, and I really like that because it's not something that I've heard them do consistently. There's like moments when certain members will do it to like accent certain parts that I've heard so far, but I haven't heard them like all do it and all maintain that kind of sound. Didn't we have another song where they mentioned a game? Ooh. Ooh, that wind up in the production. Ooh, okay. I love the way that everything lifted up, but I also love this idea of, like, again, there's the whole, like, Escape the Era is the name of the album. We had this feeling of trying to get out of the like, curse and the nightmare and the dream and stuff like that in the music video for You and I. So I think it's really interesting to incorporate more of that of, like, you know, being in a maze and you keep ending up in the same place, and, you know, the idea of, like, reaching out and, like, only, like, your fingertips are reaching the other person and things like that. I find that really interesting. And also, it feels like even though they're passing around the lines really rapidly between the members, I don't know, there's this feeling of isolation in it. And maybe that's me like reading into it because of the lyrical content, but there's this feeling of like disconnect between their parts. Like, because I've seen in certain songs that they've done where they've passed off the lines. They did it in like their most recent Comeback From Us, where they would like pass a line from one member to the other like mid-line. And they did it super smooth. It was really good. And so seeing them be able to pass on parts and their voices flow together really easily, like they blend really well. Seeing that contrast here where it feels a lot more like cut off from each other, their lines, like the way that they're delivering them, the way that one line will end and the next one will begin. They don't seem to like flow seamlessly together. Like it all works as like a coherent sound for the song, but there is this feeling of disconnect. So it feels like they're all kind of isolated in their own place, but they're trying to connect over. And you get that a little bit more with the chorus. We have like, I think some layered vocals and stuff too, which might be helping with that. There's some layered vocals here too, but I love that wind up. That feeling of like panic too. we're building. Ooh, okay, interesting. I have some ideas with like Dami's like lyrics there of like I feel like in the invisible walls and stuff is interesting. Again, like the at the tip of this maze, we have like the at my fingertips, like there's this feeling of like almost reaching this place, and then they end up back where they started. Like even though they're so close to getting out and finding kind of like that salvation, it's still like just out of reach, like they just can't get to each other, which is interesting. I like the kind of singing we have at the beginning too. That too, of like the moment I open my eyes, I'm in a dream again. Even like opening my eyes next to you makes me feel like, you know, next to someone, but at the same time, it's not like with them. Like again, this feeling of like being almost together, and yet there's this separation. And that even like Dami talking about like the invisible walls and like her like cries, her voice hitting it is like there's something, even though they're so close, like in terms of like space together, there's something blocking them from each other. And this idea of like even when I open my eyes, like I'm in the dream again, that feeling of like almost getting to salvation, and then somehow you end up all the way back at where you started, like this loop that they're stuck in and they're trying to break out of. I love Handong's voice there too. Ooh, vibrato there. I love all the drums. The like, I think like hi-hat on it. Ooh, okay, the like count-in thing again. Was it them who had the count-in? I can't even remember anymore. Is that bad? Is it bad that I've like reacted to enough music that it's starting to like come together in my brain? Probably. But I love the like higher drum sounding in the chorus. It like really lifts everything up, elevates it. I love how their voices are getting more into kind of that like mixed voice sound, and I think it really fits with that like panic, like that rising feeling of like needing to get out and like kind of signaling for help. Damn. Okay, no, go back. Go back to the beautiful bridge. They're just so good. And again, like changing up the sound of their voice, like the tone of it, going from that like more guttural sound at the beginning to more of like a mixed tone, and now falsetto, just beautiful. With that count-in too. That just fades. Oh, I love that build up into Sua's part. Like, so good with like the drums. They're so good at like incorporating the drums for like build up and like changing the energy of the song, which like is what like your rhythm section is for in the production. But just like it always hits just right. Oh, the little break in the production too. I love the way that the cadence of when they said Mayday too, of like really breaking it up and having that jump in the notes, because it does have that feeling of like a siren, right? Of like that like signal for help, right? Like in terms of like an emergency. I'm clarifying that because I did use siren in terms of the like mythical creature when talking about them before. So having that as part of the cadence is like this mimicking that, but it's also like that fear too of like when your voice kind of like rises in pitch, because like it usually does that because you're like tightening up. So like when you tense up when you're afraid, you're also tensing up like your muscles around your voice box, and when you tighten your vocal cords, that's how you get higher notes. So when your voice kind of like rises up an octave when you're tense, that's like an actual like physical repercussion of that. But it's also kind of sad that like at the very end, like the last like lyrics that we end off with is like, so I can reach you, right? Like it's still trying to reach this person. It's like not bookending this story. It's just like the desperation that is in this, which I think is interesting coming off of You and I, of like this introduction of, oh, something is wrong and I don't want to be in this nightmare anymore. And then now this is kind of like the panic before, I don't know how the rest of the story is going to progress, but lots of really cool things with the way that they were using the tones of their voice in that one. Okay, this song title is intriguing to me too, because we've had a couple of mentions of stars as like beams of light in the darkness. We even had like in the last song with Mayday, there was the like inside the darkness, and then the intros inside outside. So there's this feeling of like being stuck on the like inside in the darkness and the nightmare and this thing that they don't want to be anymore, contrast with like outside where they want to be, where they long to be, where they're kind of reaching out. And I feel like outside is like the stars, right? Like something is, the darkness is kind of covering up where the stars are. So having witch a star, which I definitely want to say wish a star. I don't know, that's like not a grammatical sentence either, but having that be the title makes me think that we're kind of continuing with that idea of like trying to reach the outside, and also like you again wish on stars, so it might be continuing with that. I don't know, we'll find out. I wasn't expecting the like drop sound. Okay. This is vibier than I was expecting. Ooh, I like the layered vocals. Ooh, okay. Interesting. I wasn't expecting this kind of, for lack of a better description, dreamy sound to the production, which probably fits. Like it's supposed to feel kind of dreamy and floaty, but kind of like the brighter side of dreams. I feel like a lot of their music up to this point has dug into the nightmare imagery and wanting that to be something that is almost like alluring, tempting, like you know that there's something bad about a nightmare and yet there's something about it that lures you in. And this feels more kind of dreamy in the like softer sense, in the like kind of like lullaby sense, but it feels very wistful. It feels very nostalgic, like wanting to be in a better place. And that's kind of like here, it's like I want to run closer to you, like this idea of like dreaming of a better place because you can't get out of where you are. Kind of continuing that need of like, you know, after the panic of, it's almost like exhaustion, right? Where like you go through something really stressful and then you realize that like you can't do anything about it right now. So you kind of like daydream about the possibilities of like things being better, or like what it's going to be on the other side of whatever's stressing you out. I like the really breathy layered vocals too. Why a red monster? That's something I want to loop back to. Ooh, okay, this is super cool. I love the production on this one of just like very synth heavy, dreamy. I love the way that they have the layered vocals, very breathy because it makes the leading vocal kind of like sink into it. So it's a little bit muddy, which sometimes could be a bad thing. Sometimes I pointed out in production things where I'm like, this feels a little bit muddy, a little crowded. I would have like a little more distinction between parts, but I feel like it fits with this one because it has this feeling of kind of like sinking in to kind of the softness of the dream and like this daydream, this hopeful feeling that they have. And even like the what planet am I on makes me feel kind of like floating through space, like which is like empty and dark and there aren't a lot of people around, but there's something about like the weightlessness and the like vast possibilities and things like that. Like there's being adrift in space is like a scary concept, but at the same time there is something kind of dreamy and carefree about it, right? Like I'm thinking of like a lot of imagery in like art and like visualizers for songs and stuff like that, where they'll have a representation of like being in space and the stars and like cosmos and stuff like that, where there is something very like magical and dreamy about the kind of aesthetic that they're putting into it, even though there is something like underlying kind of like scary about floating aimlessly in space. I'm loving the vibe of the song though. I like the star. The way they like pitch down. I'm assuming that's like post. They did that in post. The like da, da, in the star, because there's a ton of, gosh, why can't I think of the word auto-tune? There's a bunch of auto-tune on it. It makes me think a little bit of Porter Robinson, his music. If you don't know him, you should go listen to his music. It's great. But it has kind of a similar feel of like really synth heavy, really cool uses of auto-tune, kind of like a dreamy feeling to his music. So that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting. And I love his music, so. What was that beautiful vocal melody? And why didn't I get a warning? I knew that they were gonna do stuff that just made me go, hang on a minute. This is the song that I was like, they're gonna probably blindside me with something, and this is that song. I was not expecting it to be like this, but I'm so happy. I'm so happy they're doing something that I would not have guessed. I would not, if you had asked me what kind of sound do you think that Dreamcatcher's gonna like play with in this album, I would not have said something like this. That would not have been where my brain went. Ugh. Okay, the beautiful vocal melody, and it has to be Yehyun and Siyeon that does it, right? Like they couldn't have given me a little bit of a breather. It had to be them. I mean, obviously any of them had done that, I would have felt the same way, but you know what? Yehyun and Siyeon know what they're doing, okay? They're coming for me and I don't appreciate it. But like I'm also here for it at the same time. Beautiful melody, but also there's something kind of sinister now in the like, why does it feel like it'll be fine? I feel like that is setting off some alarms in me again, because before I was like, it's almost like, let me just escape for a bit, whereas like this feels a little bit more sinister again, of like kind of falling into the dream, right? I talked before about like sirens, like the siren call, this beautiful song, and you don't realize the danger until it's too late. That's almost what it feels like they're being lured back into the nightmare and they don't quite realize it yet, because they've tried to escape and they've had like the panic and they've tried and they've, you know, cast spells and like all this kind of thing where they've legitimately tried to get out, and now they're kind of like settling back in to it, like they're letting themselves be lulled back, you know, like a lullaby back into the dream, and that makes me nervous. Gorgeous. Gosh, that's a little graphic. We had the monster too. The like red too, like red is usually like a warning, right? Like we use it for like warning signs and labels, and it's associated with like danger a lot of the time. Also, it's like the color of blood, and there can be lots of things with that too that are kind of like dangerous. Actually, fun fact about humans, just like if I could put my linguist cap on for a second. With languages, you'll have, if people have words for colors, they'll usually have something that says light, something that has shadow. They'll have specific words for those. And then if they have like a specific color that they have a word for in their language, it'll be red. And that's how like all languages develop. You can have a bunch of nuance in colors too, where languages will have lots of different ways to describe tons of different colors, but they'll definitely have red. So it'll be light, shadow, red. And the reason for that is if you see something red in nature, it's dangerous, and you want to be able to communicate to other people, hey, that's dangerous, it's red. So I think that it's interesting that they're saying like a red monster, a red moon, like that specific color choice, while they're saying like, you know, something like a monster, comparing it with that, and then saying like, oh, I'm going to fall into this dream again, I'm going to fall asleep again, and then hear like the forest and having like a tree fall and like that kind of thing, and then they're saying, oh, but I'm going to fall into this deep sleep again. Interesting that they have those specific color choices. And I pointed out before with the red monster, I'm like, I feel like that has to be significant, because why point out a specific color if it's not going to be symbolic in some way? So I think it's kind of like the danger, and that was like kind of the first hint. Obviously a monster is also not a great thing either, but like the hint that there's something dangerous about this dream, and they just haven't quite grasped it yet. It's a vibe though. I love all the little synth details. Because they're very like sharp synth, so it feels like twinkling, right? Like it has like that star kind of feeling to it. Just before we get into the bridge, not to like fully interrupt. See, that seems ominous too. Sua. Ooh, okay, I love that we went from Jiu, softer, and then we had Sua with those like darker, warm tones to her voice, and then Xian coming through with that brighter tone too. This seems ominous. Those ad-libs. Ooh. No, those ad-libs in the back. We're going back for that one. A little vocal run. We're just gonna let it play out. Ooh, ooh, see, I love the sound of that one. I feel like it was so vibey. I love it. I don't want to love it because I feel like there's a ton of ominous imagery in like the lyrics and the way that it fits into like the story, because it is this feeling of like falling back into the dream and just kind of like letting yourself be there. Let it convince you that you're safe even though you're not, right? Especially with the like, what planet am I on and things like that, of like kind of getting lost in kind of the space and stuff like that, especially after something like Mayday, where, they really had like the veil had been lifted and they could really see what was around them, and they were kind of desperately trying to get out. To have something like this where it does feel very much like there's kind of like a haze over the whole thing. But I was also thinking, because the bird before in the lyrics that's in the chorus, I was thinking for a little bit about the bird imagery. One thing about birds is that they're scavengers, usually for things that are like deceased, which makes me a little nervous. But they can also be very symbolic of like gods and be like messengers and things like that. I don't know how much of that would translate into this one, but I'm thinking like the Modigan, which is a Celtic spirit. It's kind of complicated with Celtic stories because gods aren't really what the terminology of it, but the Modigan kind of falls into the three-headed goddess motif that you see in a lot of mythology. So that's the maiden, the mother, and the hag, and kind of depends on the imagery, but like the whole like young beautiful woman, mother, maternal kind of appearance and stuff like that, and then kind of like the witch kind of the old witch in the forest kind of imagery. So that is interesting to me because that's usually with like crows, ravens and stuff are associated with her, just making reference to like a goddess, especially since the three-headed goddess is also related to Hecate. Hecate is also associated with that like three-headed kind of different formed goddess, and she's also a goddess associated with witchcraft, which we've had lots of imagery in this as well. And like crossroads, she also represents that, because like the three choices of like the three different versions of this goddess and stuff like that. And there's usually some kind of trickery in it, right? Like if you meet the maiden and you treat her well because she's this beautiful maiden, then she'll transform into this ugly old woman who like curses you and things like that. And like if she appears to you as this like old woman and you treat her poorly because of that, then she'll turn into the beautiful maiden and she'll curse you. That kind of those stories as well. But it can also go vice versa, of like if she appears as like this old woman and you help her and you show a lot of compassion, she can turn into the maiden and treat you with compassion as well. So it's kind of interesting that is an image here. I don't know if it goes that far. I'm only bringing it up because it tends to be associated, like the three-headed goddess and stuff like that tends to be associated with like witchcraft and magic and that kind of a thing, which is very prominent in the storyline and their lyrics and things like that. So I loved that song. That might be one of my favorites. I feel like I'm definitely going to be listening to that. I have like the perfect playlist that I'm going to put that on, where I just have like those really like dreamy synthy songs on it. And I'm procrastinating a little bit because the last song usually gets me in all of my feelings. I'm never prepared. I'm never in a good headspace for that. I'm definitely not ready for this, because not only is it the last song and they usually get me, it's also called Scar. I just don't have a good feeling, especially after the last one, which was like a really great song, but had a lot of ominous undertones of us kind of giving up. And I don't like that in storyline, for storyline reasons. I have to like relax my shoulders. I have to stop being so tense. Okay. Ooh, beautiful. Ooh, good shift into the guitars. Wow, we slowed down a lot. Oh, I love that passing, especially with Yehyun being the one who's kind of like responding because of her prominence in the storyline, at least in You and I. So her kind of being like the main one that was lost that they're trying to kind of beckon back. And I love that call and response there. Ooh. Hang on, we switched completely there. Hang on. Okay, I was like ready for something a little more ballad-esque, especially when we started with the like beautiful like magical string section at the beginning, but now it feels more like we're switching up again. With Yehyun having that part that switch up, it's darker, it has a little bit more like grittiness to it, aggression in comparison to kind of like the compassion and empathy of the lyrics from the other members leading up to that point. And like I also like the line where Yehyun said like you'll play games with me or whatever. It's very interesting because it's like not being able to trust what's in front of you, and it's almost like even though they are finally kind of like face to face and able to interact with each other, like the members with each other, it's almost like Yehyun doesn't believe it, like it's an illusion and she can't trust that she's actually seeing them in front of her. So she's thinking that this is just some kind of trick to get to her because that's what the nightmare and the curse has been like up to this point. Ooh. Suwa, goodness gracious. That voice after what we had with Yehyun's part? Okay, this song is tripping me out, but in the best way. Like, they're just doing a little bit of everything in this song. I feel like it's been like 5 songs and we're a minute in, which I feel like fits with the whole like dream imagery, right? Like being trapped in this dream, trying to get out of it, and you're kind of like switching between different layers of the dreams and things like that. And there's a different extent to them like trying to help and reach out, and then like the doubt and mistrust and all that kind of thing. And like trying not to get trapped themselves, right? Like the other members may want to save Yehyun, but they can't also get trapped in the curse themselves. I love the guitar on the one side we're mixing. Is Suwa the one who's afraid of being trapped as well? Isn't she the one that was in the forest and she had all the like branches and hands and stuff holding her in place? So interesting to say like she can't move. Anyway. Ooh, the like everything's the same. Again, that feeling of like being stuck in the loop, right? Of like every time you try to get out, you end up back where you started. But also that I can't do anything alone. It's like you need the other members to help. Like the only way to get out is for all of them to work together. And yet at the same time, there's like, again, that like mistrust that we had with Yehyun's part. So it's like they can't band together because the nightmare, the curse is making them not want to come together, or like not trust that they're actually getting help. I know I'm focusing a lot on storyline, but I'm just like invested now. Okay, Handang. She still has this part though. Like she wants to get out, right? Like it's even the like get up where she says in like the call and response, like she wants to get out, but then there's this like doubt and this fear and like not being able to kind of like grab onto that hope because she's been fooled before. I hope that this ends on a happy note. I love time passes the time passes and burns into a memory. I love that line. There's some great vocal slides happening here. You know I love a vocal slide. But again, that like hope of like, I hope that this is actually the dream, right? The like mistrust of what's in front of you. What's a dream? What's reality? And what can you trust? What's actually happening? What isn't? And kind of hoping that, you know, like the really bad stuff is just a dream. And then I get to wake up and forget about it and leave it behind because it's not reality. Okay, I love that melody, but the line is really sad. Also, we're getting into some guitars. This song is like, there's so many different parts, like things in it that like, I just want to like go through it, like all the little details, but I won't be able to do that in this video without it being like hours long. Like, all the layers of strings. Like the strings on the one side, and the guitars, which is also strings, but like the contrast and the mixing. Ooh. Okay, so many things happening. I love the stop, and I love how we had Gio in that part of like the bridge, but she didn't like super soften up her voice. So there was almost this like, I don't know, like conviction in it. Like the determination to get out. Don't go further into the dream though. I love this change up. We're gonna end on that? The ominousness? Oh, I was like, I hope we end on a happy note. Oh, I have thoughts. I have thoughts about that being the ending with like one, Yehyun, given the storyline, but the idea of it being like, I don't know, showing like the hidden parts of myself. I feel like that might be a hint about what's to come in terms of what kind of like the lyrical content of the next album, next comeback kind of things, because it's going to be like, I think digging more into like what the nightmares are, right? We've talked a little bit about how they have like specific like nightmares that they represent and fears and things that they represent, but it might be digging a lot more into what that is and how it affects them and how the nightmare, the curse, like plays off of that. I really like the switch up though. I like having that like aggressive rocky sound kind of contrast. And I like that it's Yehyun because not only does that fit with the storyline, but I feel like it is a little bit different for her voice, given that if you're going to do something a little more rocky, there are members that I would expect to kind of fit with that. And Yehyun is usually the one who kind of smooths out their sound because she has a very like smooth voice to her and a bit of a warmer, darker tone, so she usually contrasts a little bit more, so I like her getting something that has that kind of sound to it in the production. I feel like that album was a little bit sad, but not in the like, I'm bawling my eyes out because of like the lyrical content and the way that like the emotions of the song hit me, but in terms of like the story that it's telling of like realizing the nightmare and then panicking and trying desperately to get out, and then kind of being lured back into it and kind of having like this false sense of security in it, even though there are still like these, I feel like the like subconscious is still like, hey, like you need to get out of this, like panicking, but the like conscious mind is like, no, it's fine, like everything will be fine, don't worry so much, that kind of a thing. And then the end of it being almost like a last ditch attempt of like, we need you to get out of this, and then having Yehyun talk about like falling deeper into it. Like I feel like it ended with her being further into the nightmare, further into the curse than she started off as, which makes me excited from like a storyline thing, because I feel like it's gonna be like desperate measures and the rest of the members are really going to have to like pull together to figure it out. And I think it's also going to lead to pulling more on the nightmares and the fears that they represent and what that means for them, because I feel like they're gonna have to face it, right? Like the best way to get over your fears is to face them head on and deal with them. So I feel like that might be some of the stuff that we get into with like the next release. Is it the end? Are we getting near the end of the actual like nightmare storyline? I think we are. So that might be kind of like a cap to it of like, how do they actually get out of this like permanently, instead of like this loop that I was talking before. It feels like they've been through this before of like trying to get out of the nightmare, and it might have even been like other members in the past, and it just happens to be Yehyun in this version. And then this is like finally their time to actually get out, because it's like the end of it all, and them like facing their fears and actually facing the nightmare and the curse head on is the only way of actually getting out. I don't know. Some of my favorite moments though in their music coming of that, I really liked the intro. I really liked some of the things that they were doing, like their vocal tones throughout the whole album. I don't know if I like Witch a Star more than You and I, but I feel like I would have to kind of hear the whole album together to fully realize that, because I didn't re-listen to You and I while going through this. So I don't know, I'll have to see. But let me know your favorite songs and some of your thoughts about storyline and stuff. I hope you enjoyed listening to that along with me. You can click this playlist to go and see my previous reactions, or you can subscribe so you don't miss next time I post a Dreamcatcher reaction, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!